Good morning. My name is Eric Blank. Today is February 18th, and this is the Commissioners' Weekly Meeting. Commissioner Plant, you ready? Any preliminary remarks? Are you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Good morning. I am ready to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Gilman,
Good morning. I would also vote to approve the consent agenda.
as would I. Mr. Davis, 20A-0345E.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. On September 12th of last year, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an unopposed motion to reopen the proceeding and to amend the settlement agreement addressing its economic development rate. Through the motion, Public Service seeks to correct what it says is an error relating to the jurisdictional wholesale allocation approach set forth in the settlement agreement reached in this proceeding and approved by the Commission. Specifically, Public Service states in the motion that the company has determined that the splitting of EDR-related costs between retail and wholesale, as established in the settlement agreement, is not permitted under its FERC-approved wholesale transmission and production tariffs. Public Service requests that the Commission modify an approved EDR settlement that strikes the related provision in Section 10 of the agreement. The change will cause all EDR costs and revenues to be allocated to the company's retail customers, consistent with the FERC tariffs and precedent. By decision number C-2610, the Commission granted in part and denied in part that motion. And Public Service timely filed an application for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration, focusing primarily on paragraph 30 of the decision. The company requests that the Commission remove the limitation in that paragraph of the authorized relief to, quote, the resulting changes in the jurisdictional allocators as applied to the estimated usage shown in confidential attachment C, and to remove the related prohibition on Public Service allocating, quote, to retail customers in future base rate proceedings any costs associated with actual usage above the usage estimates in confidential attachment C. With these two changes to the Commission's decision, Public Service further asks in its RRR that the Commission clarify that the company is authorized to apply a FERC-compliant jurisdictional allocation method to the full extent of the usage eligible for the EDR discount under each of its two existing EDR contracts. Public Service explains in its RRR that the load estimates in confidential attachment C are not intended to bind the customers to a fixed load level, nor do they define the maximum amount of load eligible for the EDR discount. The company states that any such limitations arise solely from the terms of the EDR contracts themselves and not from the confidential attachment C estimates. With respect to the QTS contract specifically, the company adds that the Commission's treatment of QTS's load estimates as binding caps is at odds with the load projection contained in the Commission-approved EDR contract and the load forecasts modeled in proceeding number 23A330E. Public Service concludes that there's no analytical or policy basis for converting the attachment C estimates into a binding limitation on either EDR eligible usage or the application of the FERC-compliant jurisdictional allocators. Finally, Public Service alleges that the outcome of the decision leaves the FERC compliance concerns underpinning the motion unaddressed, creating what it calls rate distortions that were not contemplated when the EDR contracts were approved. So I think the decision point here for you is really whether the Commission should strike the last two sentences of paragraph 30 of the decision that sets forth the limitations to the relief sought by the motion based on the usage estimates and confidential attachment C.
I guess for me, I generally keep to our prior decision, but give the company and the EDR customers a little more flexibility on the cap. The statute says that an EDR rate must not be lower than the utility's marginal cost of providing service to the qualifying customer. At the time of our June 24 order denying exceptions in the QTS case, it seemed like the EDR rate revenues might have been above marginal cost. In evaluating marginal costs today, we now have current generation and transmission cost estimates from the NTP and JTS processes, where it seems as if the actual marginal costs of serving customers like this are likely significantly higher than the revenues received, particularly given the exemptions from the TCA cost. At the same time, as I said in our prior deliberation, I believe that these two EDR framework customers have a compelling reliance interest based on our prior decision that supports the rough usage outline and attachment C to the company's motion. Nevertheless, I think there are limits to the reliance interest given the current economics of serving new and flexible loads in the Denver metro area. More specifically on the reliance interest, the Public Service Company QTS Energy Supply Agreement was executed in June 23 and clearly states that it is subject to regulatory risk. Indeed, Section 8 of the agreement reads as follows. This agreement shall be at all times subject to Commission decision granting regulatory approval. Any changes or modifications by the Commission as the Commission may, from time to time, direct in the exercise of its jurisdiction. For me, I think our prior decision struck the right balance between acknowledging the reliance interest of these customers and our responsibility to protect other non-EDR customers from overly generous tariff discounts. I do, however, take the company's point in RRR that the attachment C demand and billing metrics were never understood to be a hard cap. So I'd add some language in our RRR order, providing some further flexibility, extending the relief granted in paragraph 30 of the motion by, say, another 10 megawatts for each customer. So I deny the RRR in part and say that we don't support extending the requested relief beyond the rough attachment C billing and demand determinants, but I'd also grant the RRR in part by agreeing that the attachment C parameters were never meant to be a hard cap and providing, say, 10 megawatts of additional headroom above the attachment C determinants for both existing EDR customers. So I don't know, Commissioner Plant, anywhere you'd like to go?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like striking a pretty good balance. So I'd support that.
Commissioner Gilman?
I wanted to maybe understand your perspective from our prior language in paragraph 30. To my understanding, and even my rereading it, does not set a hard cap, but it simply sets it at the amount shown in the analysis, the only analysis really that was provided in this proceeding, without additional updated marginal cost analysis. So that was always a possibility. Where do you perceive, I guess, that would happen if that is still a route for the company to provide updated analysis that actually shows the entirety of the load for which they wish to kind of calculate this or show that it's still above marginal cost?
Mr. Davis, do you have any guidance on that? It would have to be either a new motion in this case or a new application.
Oh, actually, I think it would likely happen in a rate case because it's in a rate case where the FERC jurisdictional allocator is calculated and applied to split costs between wholesale and retail. And so I would think that if there was an attempt to seek a change in the allocator associated with usage above the limitations in the decision, that would be where the company would show that the additional relief is warranted because of a showing that the marginal cost is in fact below the discounted revenues.
Okay, thanks for that. I just, as I read that there is this avenue where updated analysis could be shown to include the entirety of the load, which just wasn't in that attachment C. But yeah, I'm fine with your path forward, Chairman.
Does that give you what you need to write an order and clarify the company's request for a future process, Mr. Davis?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Proceeding number 21A-0141E, Mr. Eden, Ms. McLaughlin.
Good morning, Commissioners. This morning, I'll tee up for your deliberations 4 applications for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration, or triple Rs, that were filed in response to the Commission's February 5th decision granting, in part, Public Service Company of Colorado's motion to acquire near-term procurement, or NTP, resources. In the February 5th NTP decision, the Commission noted the difficulty of making such momentous resource procurement decisions given the significant uncertainties regarding future load growth and peak demand impacts associated with things like data centers, the accelerated expiration of federal tax credits, and an inflationary environment for new energy resources. The Commission further noted that the expedited nature of this NTP proceeding foregoes the typical regulatory processes, including the benefit of computer-based modeling that can optimize the selection of new energy resources. Ultimately, the Commission included approximately 1,100 megawatts of new energy resources in the approved NTP portfolio for immediate procurement. The Commission deferred acquisition of another approximately 4,300 megawatts of resources until Public Service provided additional information regarding transmission and curtailment concerns, including additional spreadsheet analysis and the 10-year forecast regarding the Denver Metro constraint by March 2nd and computer-based modeling by April 2nd. On February 9th, the Colorado Energy Office, trial staff of the Commission, and the Utility Consumer Advocate, together the state agencies, jointly filed an expedited triple R. On February 13th, Interwest Energy Alliance, the Colorado Independent Energy Association, or CIEA, and Public Service each filed their own triple Rs. In the state agency's triple R, they asked the Commission to reconsider requiring additional analysis. Instead, the state agencies assert the Commission should unconditionally approve either the state agency's preferred resource portfolio or the company's preferred Tier 1 portfolio. Among other things, the state agencies argue each passing day without a final decision increases the risk that projects will not be able to qualify for the federal tax credits. They further assert the Commission's request for additional analysis and modeling creates an unnecessary new process. Even if the company is able to timely provide the requested analysis, the state agencies warn that it will take time for the Commission to review the results, make decisions, and process any subsequent triple Rs. Like the state agencies, Interwest requests that the Commission quickly approve as large of an NTP portfolio as possible, which could include the remaining projects in either the state agencies or the company's preferred portfolio. Interwest argues that the uncertainty at this late stage is sending the exact opposite signal to the market that the NTP was designed to send, and that developers will prioritize projects wherever certainty exists. CIEA likewise argues the Commission should approve Public Service's full Tier 1 portfolio no later than February 18th. Among other points, CIEA argues that it is far from certain that the additional analysis requested from Public Service will even be available or accurate on such an expedited timeline. CIEA adds that the time frame of the additional analysis will likely not allow for party feedback. CIEA avers that for at least 2 projects the Commission is considering, the levelized energy costs would immediately increase by more than 50% if the projects lose eligibility for tax credits. In Public Services triple R, the company also requests that the Commission unconditionally approve the full Tier 1 portfolio. Public Service argues that the full amount of resources in the company's Tier 1 portfolio is necessary to serve load under any forecast if the company is to continue to make progress reducing overall emissions. According to Public Service, if the state is going to capture the expiring tax benefits, the Commission must act under some uncertainties and without perfect information. The company adds that any delay will likely increase costs, compromise CODs, and may threaten project viability. Regarding the Commission's stated transmission concerns, Public Service asserts that there will be no way to solution the combined NTP and JTS-based portfolios to eliminate significant transmission investments. Such transmission investments will be needed under all scenarios if the company is to continue integrating renewables. In its RRR, Public Service also seeks clarification regarding the analysis the company is required to provide by March 2nd. The company generally expects to be able to provide the requested analysis, except for the 10-year forecast of the Denver metro constraint. Public Service states that providing such a forecast would require several months of detailed analysis. So the main issue the RRRs present is whether to unconditionally include additional projects in the approved NTP. I'm happy to walk through recommendations regarding specific bids or answer any questions, but I'll pause first for your deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Eden. So I'll throw out one proposal and see where you guys want to take it. For me, I'd largely grant the RRR request, and overall, I'm going to suggest a 3,804 megawatt portfolio, larger than what the state agencies are suggesting, but with 2 conditional approvals. More specifically, I'd approve bid 46, a 400 megawatt solar plus storage project that is attractively priced and supported by all parties in every circumstance. In addition, I'd approve bid 55, a 200 megawatt solar plus storage project located in Pueblo, which is likewise attractively priced, located in a JTS community and supported by all the parties. It's challenging to balance moving forward quickly with very large investment decisions while waiting for better data and analysis. But the party filings since our initial decision convinced me that these 2 solar plus storage projects should be approved now. I'd also propose that we conditionally approve bid 94, a 450 megawatt company-owned solar plus storage project located in the Denver metro area. It's more expensive than other solar plus storage, but for me, I just think we need as much dispatchable and other generation as we can get in the Denver metro area to increase the likelihood we can timely retire the coal plants. I'd also reaffirm our conditional approval of bid 127, the 608 megawatt company wind project. In terms of bid 89, a standalone 500 megawatt solar project, I would view the 450 megawatts of solar in bid 94 in the Denver metro area as a substitute. Although bid 89 is included in the state agency and company portfolios, it was not included in the WRA portfolio and is outside the Denver metro area. So for now, I'd leave this as a backup project. Like Commissioner Plant and the state agencies, I like bid 118, a 400 megawatt PPA storage project in Rapp County. But given that it's standalone storage and likely has a longer runway to obtain the tax credits, that it's outside the Denver metro area, and that there seem to be unresolved issues with the interconnect and transmission, I would not approve it now. Similarly, I would not require additional analysis regarding bid 56, the 200 megawatt 8-hour PPA storage project in Pueblo. Adding 8-hour storage to the system is intriguing, but bid 56 seems relatively less developed than our other available options. I would, however, encourage Public Service to address in the JTS 120-day report the interplay between 8-hour storage and thermal resources. Overall, the state agency portfolio included 3,504 megawatts of new nameplate resources, including 200 megawatts of gas, 1,000 megawatts of storage, 1,100 megawatts of solar, and over 1,200 megawatts of wind. I'm proposing that we conditionally approve 3,804 megawatts today. I'm proposing that we approve or conditionally approve 3,804 megawatts today. Assuming we ultimately decide that the conditions on both bid 127 and bid 94 have been satisfied, this proposed portfolio would have 350 megawatts more of storage and 50 megawatts less of solar as compared to the state agency's preferred portfolio, with significantly more nameplate and accredited capacity. Perhaps the biggest difference, however, is that the state agency proposals only have 200 to 500 megawatts of new generation in the Denver metro area, while this proposal, conditions on bid 94 are satisfied, has 1,400 megawatts of nameplate capacity in the Denver metro area, including a diverse mix of new gas, solar, and storage. Finally, regarding the 2 company-owned bids, 127, a 608 megawatt wind project, and bid 94, the 450 megawatt company-owned solar plus storage project in the Denver metro area. I continue to condition our approval on the company subsidiary addressing the curtailment, locational, transmission constraint, business case, and Encompass modeling concerns we've previously expressed. I understand from the company's R that it cannot provide the 10-year forecast of hourly loadings by substation to better understand when the Denver constraint is binding. Although disappointing, I would not require what sounds like months of additional modeling prior to make a decision on bids 127 and 94 and the backups. Instead, I think we decide whether the conditions to move forward with these two projects have been satisfied after the additional March 2nd analysis as clarified by the company and R and the 4/2 April 2nd Encompass modeling, along with whatever information the company can provide us on the medium-term hourly transmission constraints into the Denver metro area. As part of this, I'm also open to considering an appropriate request to provide some modest cost recovery for any actions the company may need to take to safe harbor bids 127 and 94. As such, this decision will enable all the third-party approved projects to move forward now, including the previously approved ones, without any further involvement or review from this commission. We're done. At the same time, we can continue a dialogue with the company to get our unresolved concerns addressed. So that was a lot. Commissioner Plant, anywhere you want to go, talk about your preferences, react to mine, questions, comments, concerns, dialogue with advisors. Sorry, I know this is cold.
I'm just frantically writing these down. So in terms of the uh, the Route County, you'd keep it that storage project to just keep it as an evaluate,
Or as a
sort of
backup, as a backup.
as a backup.
So the way I view it is that there's a bid 89 as a 500 megawatt solar, and Route County, the 400 megawatt storage outside Denver, would be backup for the company's bid 94, which is 450 megawatts of solar and 450 megawatts of storage in Denver.
Yeah, I think their big issue was evaluating whether or not there was enough capacity coming through that line to make it effective. So you just continue to evaluate that as a backup.
Yeah.
And then in the main difference between what you're proposing and the agencies, other than the storage project in route, is the big solar storage project in the Denver metro area.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the way I'm thinking about it, instead of doing a 500 megawatt solar project outside Denver, and instead of doing a 400 megawatt storage project in Route County, we would do one combined solar plus storage project in Denver.
Uh-huh. Okay. And then, all right. And the big solar project, then that was it 500 megawatt solar project? Which project number was that?
89.
And the Denver one was 46,
No, the Denver one was 94.
94.
Do you want to take a 5 or 10 minute break or
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just looking up
yeah, take your
the
time.
relative prices of these and stuff. I mean, my initial sense is that it seems pretty good. I want to make sure that we just aren't delaying these projects, to the point where we don't actually get the advantage. And the storage, I think, is important from a perspective of balancing, but it's not as important from a perspective of the tax credits, right? I mean, the tax credits are really contingent upon on the solar and the solar plus storage and the wind. that
Yeah,
are going
although
on.
there's
So,
pressure on the foreign entity of concern,
right.
just
Yeah.
reading through the triple R.
Yeah. So my initial sense of this is good. Uh, but I'm gonna keep looking up a couple of things and I'll pass it over to Megan. Sorry.
Commissioner Gilman.
Sorry. Um, yeah, I also frantically jotted down some notes here. So it may be possible that we have to take a break to regroup and meet with advisors and make sure we've got it all straight. But my sense was a little different. I was really okay, given these triple R filings, which appreciate them being filed so timely. I think the commission's really trying our hardest to make this move as quickly as possible and be flexible. But there's a lot going on here. This is a lot of money and there's a lot of complexity to weigh through. So, but it was helpful to have these filings come in so soon, and that really enabled the commission to take this up very, very early. So the different direction I was going to go was really to go with an approval of bids 89, 46, and 55, which are the three. 89 solar only, 46 is solar and storage, 55 is solar and storage. All of those are advocated for. All of those appear in the company's portfolio as well as in the state agency's portfolio, WRA's portfolio. For the most part, I think one of them is missing. But the more I read and considered the perspectives provided in the triple R filing, while I 100% share the focus on trying to optimize around all of the system costs that we are kind of causing and could be causing as a cascade of some of these investments, it's clear, this proceeding is not suited to do an incredibly deep dive into that. And I think we were probably under the impression that the company probably had a far better understanding of the Denver Metro constraint and when that was binding, and a lot of the details than it appears they have in terms of kind of the prolonged modeling and investigation it seems that it will actually take. So that's unfortunate. I would have hoped and would have thought they had a better understanding of that, kind of more ready to go. And I think that was our assumption, given that it's a pretty expensive issue. But considering that is not, available in the short term, I see very little likelihood that those three solar plus storage projects would not be useful. We're seeing the need for a significant amount of new generation. Those are pretty favorably priced projects, and every indication is things will get more expensive as we move forward, which is a lot of the real difficult friction we're under here. So I don't necessarily see a downside. I also see some real complications of replacing 89 with 94, which is a company-owned bid, which did not appear in any advocated portfolio. I understand it has the potential benefit of, like some unquantified currently benefit of being in the Denver Metro constraint. But I just don't see necessarily something direct we could point to in the record as to why we would replace that with a PPA bid that appeared in most of the scenarios that were advocated by the parties and the company. Even the company, I mean, that's a company-owned bid. They had it as a backup, not as a primary project. Although I take certainly your point well, that could perhaps not be quite as expensive as it looks, and or the others could be more expensive than they look because of what side of Denver it's on. But perhaps that's more of a friction with looking at that as a conditional approval versus like bid 127. Even though 127 is a wind bid, We know we've seen pretty dramatic increases in the prices of wind, which makes that a slightly more difficult resource right at this time, given those really recent dramatic increases. I know there's a lot of curtailment concerns with regard, especially to very large wind bid. So perhaps the additional investigation actually looks at those two at 94 and 127, despite them being different resources, to really understand how the modeling influences what would be picked among those. For 118, I would keep it in the mix. Frankly, I find the information put forth by the company pretty confusing about the size of the constraint here. What is actually the constraint here?
Can
Certainly.
I just ask you what you mean by keep it in the mix?
Oh, I would advocate that they move forward with it, keep it in the portfolio. Certainly, if they determine it's unfeasible for different reasons, that may happen. But so far, the information that's been provided about why, from a transmission standpoint, it could be infeasible is pretty confusing and in some cases self-contradictory. So, if this is about trying to submit different projects to make it more competitive for that particular transmission interconnection, I'm not sure why that's necessary, frankly. Like, anyone could have proposed anything they wanted in this solicitation, and that resource compared favorably to tons of other resources in this solicitation. It really does look like a favorably priced project, and I don't see why, the prospect of some future maybe development or interconnection there. That's just not really how we do this elsewhere. It's a favorably priced bid. It's in a just transition community, and that looks to me to be a reasonable project to pursue. If they can better articulate or clean up what the actual issues are, I think that's something we'd have to address at that time, but I don't see anything that's a showstopper for it right now, and don't see why we would exclude it based on the information we have before us.
So I guess just one comment, and then maybe I'll turn it back to Commissioner Plan. I think there is a decent record, at least I know we're not in the JTS, we're in the 2021 ERP, but in the JTS, there is a decent record for trying to quantify the value of locating in the Denver metro area. I think it was like around $190 a kW. So if you do apply that, the economics even out. But just so I understand where you're proposing, you would unconditionally approve 89, 46, 55, and give a fairly strong approval to 118. And then you would largely compete 127 versus 94, depending on whatever information came out in March and April. Am I understanding that sort of? Geez. I certainly understand where you're coming from and think it's a reasonable position. My gut says get what you can in the Denver metro area, but geez. Commissioner Plant, anywhere you'd like to go?
Yeah, I'm also sympathetic to trying to, get resources within the Denver constraint. I think we're gonna continue to see, pretty strong growth in the area, and, we're gonna continue to also see delays in in other areas in terms of resources. So that's one of the reasons 94 is attractive to me. I'm not as concerned on the curtailment issue as you are, Mr. Chairman, just because I think that we're going to address that curtailment over time, and we have a sort of a unique opportunity to take advantage of the tax credits now. And with that being said, I was supportive of the state agency's proposal, but are I'm looking at your proposal versus Commissioner Gilman's. Is the primary difference that 127 versus 94 and then the 118 in route?
Yeah, I guess for me, I view 118 and 89 as competing against 94, with a preference for 94. Commissioner Gilman's prepared to approve 118 and 89 now and compete the two company projects, 94 and 127, against each other. So I'd leave open the potential for having two company owned projects, 94 and 127. But I think Commissioner Gilman's ready to commit to 118 and 89 now.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I do like the 118 project en route, but I take the arguments that the company's making in terms of it is far from from our other generation, and whether or not there's going to be sufficient you know throughput coming through that area for that storage to be most effective, and analyze it within that context. So and I'm less concerned about I'm more concerned about company-owned gas than I am about company-owned renewables, as long as they're cost competitive. The 94 is a little bit more, but as I said, it's in the Denver constraint, so I think I'd be more aligned with your proposal, um, uh, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's just break it down and make sure we're all on the same page. So on bid 46, a 400 megawatt solar plus storage project, there's a 3-0 vote to approve that unconditionally with no further review, discussion, approval. Do you agree with that, Commissioner Plant?
Yes.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
And on bid 55, it's a 200 megawatt solar and storage project located in Pueblo. We got a 3-0 vote to approve that. Is that correct, Commissioner Plant?
Yes.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just jump to bid 56, the 200 megawatt 8-hour PPA storage in Pueblo. Advisors are saying we're gonna encourage PSCO to address that in the JTS 120-day report as the interplay between an 8-hour storage and thermal resources. Are you guys okay with that outcome, Commissioner Plant?
Yep.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
Okay, as am I. So that's a 3-0 vote. Let's go back to bid 89. That's a 500 megawatt solar project, standalone solar outside the Denver metro area. It's decently priced. Commissioner Gilman, it sounds like you're okay approving that now. Is that correct? You'd
Right.
vote. And Commissioner Plant, I'd probably wait on that one because I prefer putting the solar in Denver. But it sounds like you're okay with the conditional approval of bid 94, or do you want a few moments to talk to advisors?
So you're talking about it's an 89 versus 94 question.
I think it's an 89 and 118 versus 94 for me.
Oh, because it doesn't have storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd be more inclined with the 94.
Is that a vote, or do you want a few moments to talk to advisors?
Do you want to just take 5?
Yeah, let's take 10. Let's come back at 9:50.
All right, sounds good.
Mr. Eaton, could you and council reach out to Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey there, sorry. I started one too. I don't know where it is. It may be going on somewhere.
Hey,
Somewhere else in the
Tom,
ether.
you're on, off mute.
I just muted him.
Thank you.
Sorry, a little late.
Uh,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so after talking with the advisors, I understand your bid, Mr. Chairman, your proposal, Mr. Chairman, a little bit better. And my hesitation with your proposal is that we're taking 89 off the table and we're putting 127 and 94 both as conditional approvals. And I think that's just we're putting too many delays and taking too many projects off the table. Um, as I understand it, with Commissioner Gilman's proposal, 89 to 500 megawatts of solar would go ahead, whereas yours would cut the 89. And the 127 and 94 would be evaluated out into the future, and we'd see if one of those goes ahead. So I would support that proposal instead. I just think we're taking too much off the table and delay, and I feel like we can't let the possibility of the tax credit benefit go away because we're going to end up paying for that in the long run.
No, I understand and am pretty sympathetic to that view. Let me just ask you guys one question, which is given that, and maybe I'll direct it towards you, Commissioner Gilman. Yeah, given that the company can identify the transmission lines it needs to build to get remote power into Denver, and given that they can't tell us when those or they don't know when those transmission constraints bind, how are you confident? And given that it's going to take 5 to 8 years to build new transmission, given that we don't know the lines that need to be built, how are you confident that we're going to retire the coal plants in a reliable way that keeps the lights on with all this remote generation? That's the piece I'm really struggling with the remote generation. Without understanding transmission, I just don't see how you can count on it to retire the coal in Denver. So just curious how that enters your thinking, or if you have an answer to that.
Look, I think the hardest thing about this process is the list of things we don't know. And that's really
Definitely that.
I get it. But that's in part a result of the situation we've been put in with this very fast wind down of the federal incentives, which dramatically impacts the cost of these resources. And every indication is that we'll need more resources in the time to come. Even given these changes in the federal policy, renewables still appear to be the cheapest. The most dramatic price increases we've seen are actually on gas resources. And so I just don't see a scenario in which they are not useful. Totally agree that there are likely some implied costs here with regard to transmission. And we have to figure out the timing of that better. We also have, and I think we'll talk about this more later. Generation is one side of the equation, right? Load and flexibility and how we are best using those resources that we have, both in generation as well as transmission, to kind of optimize our load and our flexibility around what we actually have available is another side of the equation that we shouldn't ignore. We are going to have to get to a mode where we far better optimize across all of these. And I know we've made attempts to do so in the JTS, that are improvements over the CEP, but it's a long walk to get there. There are simply so many variables we're trying to plan around. And I don't think foregoing resources that are favorably priced, that are right in front of us, that have time to safe harbor and get the tax incentives, I don't think foregoing those is a good scenario in any of the ways the future plays out. So I think we have to make the best decision we can with what's in front of us, which is the pricing and what these resources are, and ensuring we can safe harbor them and get the tax advantages. And then we have to make the next best decision when that comes before us. But we just simply don't have all of those decisions before us, all of that information before us. So I think we've tried asking the right questions and getting more information, and just frankly, not all of it exists. So we have to move forward. I don't think it's the right option to just say, well, we're not going to move forward because we don't have perfect information. But I don't
think that's what
disagree
I
with
was
you
suggesting.
that it would be ideal.
All right, so Commissioner Plant, are you voting to approve 89?
Yes.
Commissioner Gilman, are you voting to approve 89?
Yes.
I'm not gonna dissent. I totally understand what you're doing and why. And I don't know that we want this as a TBC decision, Mr. Eaton. But maybe just put a footnote in saying my preference would have been to go the other way, but I certainly understand why we're doing this. And then 118, Commissioner Plant, would you vote to approve 118?
Yeah, so Commissioner Gilman, if help me understand exactly what you're proposing. You're proposing approval of the storage project en route, but with an evaluation, by the company as to whether there's enough throughput to make that effective, or is it just a unconditional approval?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really appropriate, given what we know now, to say we're just going to totally hold off to the JTS. This is a favorably priced product.
Really good
So
price.
yeah, so and frankly, I think most of the arguments are a little more about competition than actual physical limitations at this point in time for the transmission. So, there is likely some flexibility here with the COD being pretty early in the bid, that if there needs to be some additional analysis to ensure transmission-wise this works, I think that's fine. But from our perspective, pending that there's no issues there, I would vote to approve it.
Okay, and I would approve that as well. It would be good to get information from the company in terms of the property tax advantage as well, if they can provide that to us, because that'll be material benefit to customers.
So it's a pretty strong approval, but with maybe an asterisk by it. So is that a fair characterization consistent with your comments, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, the company has expressed some concerns. If they further analyze that and elaborate on those, I think we're willing to hear and better understand those. But knowing what we know today, it looks like it should move forward.
And just for clarity, you're viewing sort of 94 more as a potential backup. It's not approved today, even conditionally. We're going forward with 89 and 118, but 94 is sort of either a backup to the solar plus storage we just approved or a backup to the 127 wind bid. But that's sort of how you're viewing 94 at the current time. Is that a fair characterization, or would you say that different?
Yeah, I'm trying to parse in my mind between conditionally approved and backup. I certainly think when and if the company analyzes the implications of the Denver Metro constraint there, it could be that it looks more favorable than bid 127. And I think that's a potential, and especially given the other concerns around 127 that you've already expressed, frankly, with regard to curtailments and other issues. So I don't know, Mr. Eden maybe can help me. Does that mean it's a backup or it's conditionally approved, or there's some competition between the two from a semantics perspective? But I think better understanding the actual trade-off between those two when you actually, look at all the factors involved. I'm fine moving forward with one of them. I don't know which one is frankly preferable given all of the different things at play. So Mr. Eden maybe can help me with what you see as how that should be described.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it's kind of semantics, but I guess you could say it's bid 127 and bid 94 are conditionally approved as alternates. And then based on the additional analysis that the company provides by March 2nd regarding the just adding in the consideration of the Denver Metro constraint, it could be that bid 94 having that dispatchable capacity within the Denver Metro constraint makes that more valuable on the system than bid 127. At that time, the commission could issue a decision fully approving bid 94 instead of bid 127.
Yeah, so I would say they're like, it's a conditional approval, but as Mr. Eden said, alternates to each other. Whereas we only really foresee one or the other based upon that better analysis of the benefits associated specifically with 94 and how that influences the pricing.
All right, so let me just see if I can summarize what we've done today. So today we've unconditionally approved, I think, 2,800 megawatts of nameplate capacity, and conditionally approved another 600 to 900 megawatts, depending on 127 versus 94, but likely not both. Of that, we have 200 megawatts of gas, 500 megawatts of solar, 600 megawatts of solar plus storage solar, 600 megawatts of solar plus storage, and 700 megawatts of standalone storage. And we've approved today 89, unconditionally approved 89, 46, 55, and 118 with an asterisk. So would you say that any differently, Mr. Eden?
No, I think that's right. I do have a question on bid 118. Was that a 2-1 decision on that, or a 3?
No, given the status of the record, given the timing constraints, I'm going to vote 3-0, but if you could just drop a footnote saying my preference would have been, but I just do this all as a 3-0 vote.
Okay, so including the same story for bid 89, then drop a footnote, but it's a 3-0 vote.
Yeah. Just say that you had concerns about getting this capacity into Denver and what it means for our ability to timely retire the coal plant.
Okay, so 3-0 vote to approve bid 89 and bid 118, but to
Yeah,
note
with the asterisks,
Right.
asterisks.
Right.
And then 94 and 127 are gonna depend. What we're gonna do, likely one or the other, but it depends on the analysis.
correct. And then I just would have one other thing to bring up, and it's R Public Service seeks clarification regarding the additional analysis, that March 2nd analysis. And again, it states that it won't be able to provide that 10-year forecast of the Denver Metro constraint. So advisors recommend affirming that the company's plan for the additional March 2nd analysis as set forth in its R is acceptable. But given the commission's rulings today, that additional March 2nd analysis should be limited to bid 127, bid 94, and then any additional information it can provide regarding bid 118.
Yeah, I think that's right. Commissioner Plant, do you agree with that characterization?
Yeah, it sounds right to me.
Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
As do I.
Okay, I think that wraps it up for me on this matter.
Do you guys want a TBC, or Mr. Eden, your thoughts on TBC versus ABC?
I think we have a little bit of time to get this out, so we probably could do it TBC, although I think it's pretty clear from this discussion what the commission has decided. So I think ABC would also be okay and would allow the decision to get out a little bit faster.
Would you just show me the footnotes? I think that was a yes, Ms. McLaughlin.
Chair, and thank you for the discussion today. I just want to flag that this is where we've got kind of stepped triple Rs as well. The commission may get additional triple Rs. So as this comes back on the agenda, Mr. Eden and I will obviously be working on a decision based on your discussion today and can move forward with that as ABC, but with you understanding that footnote. And if we need to have the full decision circulated after further discussion, we'll have a discussion at that time or through a weekly meeting.
Yeah, and a plea to the parties not to respond with triple R to deliberations, but wait till the written decision. We have not had a chance to know what each other are going to say. So we're reacting in real time and just respond to the order, not what you hear in deliberations or questioning in a technical workshop. So would you say that any differently, Mr. Eden or Ms. McLaughlin?
No, I think that's right. The commission speaks through its decisions, and any additional triple Rs can be lodged to the subsequent written decision.
All right. If you would just show me the footnotes before they go out, Mr. Eden, I think this can be ABC.
Sounds good.
Thank you both. 24A-0442E. Mr. Eden.
Yes. Hello again.
Yes, for the weary.
So this one should be a little bit quicker, though. As you know, the commission is currently recirculating the decision addressing the applications for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration that were filed in response to decision number C25-047. This is the phase one of the just transition solicitation. During the circulation process, there were three potential additional directives that came to Chair Blank's attention regarding the forthcoming large load tariff filing. Advisors recommend the commission deliberate and vote on whether to include these three additions in the triple R decision. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Chair Blank to discuss those three additional directives.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Eden. So as I went through the TBC process on the company's TG window proposal, I had a couple of additional requests that I'd like to put in this order for the company to include as part of its large new load advice letter filing. First, given the record in this case on the current size of the TG and PG classes compared to the potential large new loads, I'd like to ask the company to include an alternative tariff structure that assumes that large new loads constitute a separate unique rate class responsible for the costs they impose on the system. This request would be in addition to any proposals that the company chooses to submit, but it would be part of the direct case. Second, given the marginal cost of the new capacity identified in the JTS, I'd request that the company present an evaluation of the costs required to serve large new loads, assuming they require equivalent sized new combustion turbines based on the most recent bid prices, plus a planning reserve margin. Again, I'd ask that this baseline analysis be presented as part of the separate class along with whatever else the company wants. Finally, given the challenges of getting remote generation into the Denver metro area during critical peak demand periods identified in this record, I'd request that the company include a structure in its tariff, again, in addition to anything else it would like to present, that would offer lower rates to large new loads that could locate outside the Denver metro area or flexibly reduce their demand during critical peak hours. So, Commissioner Plant, thoughts on those three requests for the large new load tariff?
Yeah, I'd support that.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I think those are helpful additions to ensure that we're really vetting the appropriate information, especially the first one. That's something I've at least questioned and expressed previously is, there's a suggestion, obviously, of the filing of the new tariff, and I'm not clear if we are certain this should not be its own rate class. So I think having an actual evaluation of that would be very beneficial as we move forward in those policies. So yeah, I support each of your points being added.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'd just say it'd be nice to get it in as part of the direct case instead of trying to struggle and get it in as supplemental direct and then limiting the party's ability to response and discovery. So thanks, and that can be an ABC order. Mr. Eden, appreciate it.
Sounds good.
25A-0354E. Mr. Peters.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alec Peters of your Commission Council. This proceeding is an application filed by Public Service appealing Elbert County's denial of the requisite siting permits to build a portion of the Colorado Power Pathway project through the county. On February 3rd, 2026, Public Service filed a motion to strike from the record certain portions of the answer testimony of 3 Elbert County witnesses. First, Public Service seeks to strike testimony from Elbert County Commissioner Mike Buck, who testified that he received a call from a person named Greg Brophy who said he was a lobbyist for Public Service and told Commissioner Buck that the route for the Pathway project had already been selected and could not be changed. Public Service next challenges testimony of County witness Carrie Giblets, a citizen of Elbert County, who testified that Public Service representatives told citizens at public engagement events that the route was a done deal and that Public Service had the right of eminent domain, and if local officials denied the company's applications, Public Service would just appeal the decision to the PUC and the decision would be overturned. County witness Giblets also testified that Public Service representatives told citizens that an eastern route for the Pathway project was never a viable option because it would increase costs for Public Service customers. Lastly, Public Service challenges testimony of County witness Christopher Price, who testified that Public Service employee Jennifer Chester responded to county concerns over the proposed route by saying she could not provide more details because the route was selected through a desktop analysis and many of the details wouldn't be determined until construction. Public Service seeks to strike the testimony on 3 grounds. First, Public Service argues that the challenged testimony is unreliable hearsay and therefore inadmissible under Rule 803 of the Colorado Rules of Evidence, or CRE, Rule 1501 of the Commission's Rules of Practice and Procedure, and Colorado Supreme Court precedent. Second, Public Service argues the testimony is not relevant and is therefore inadmissible under CRE Rule 402. And third, Public Service argues the testimony is unfairly prejudicial and therefore inadmissible under CRE Rule 403. In response to the motion, Elbert County argues that the Commission should not strike the challenged portions of testimony because 1, they are not hearsay because they are statements by a party opponent. 2, they are not hearsay because they are not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. 3, even if they are hearsay, they are admissible under the Commission's more relaxed evidentiary standards. 4, they are highly relevant. And 5, they are not unfairly prejudicial. I can answer any questions now or give a recommendation.
If you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Under the CRE, the challenged testimony is not hearsay, is relevant, and is not unfairly prejudicial. Accordingly, the motion should be denied. First, CRE Rule 801D2D provides that a statement is not hearsay if the statement is offered against a party and was made by the party's agent or servant concerning a matter within the scope of the agency or employment and made during the existence of the relationship. Each of the challenged portions of testimony satisfies this definition and therefore is not hearsay. While Public Service disputes whether Mr. Brophy was acting as a lobbyist for the company when he called Commissioner Buck, Public Service does not argue that he was not acting on its behalf, and the company's rebuttal testimony suggests that he was. As for County witness Giblets' challenged testimony, the fact that each speaker is not identified by name is not fatal to admission under CRE 801D2D, whereas here it is undisputed that the speakers were representatives of the company acting within the scope of their employment. Finally, County Witness Price's revised answer testimony identifies the speaker in his challenge testimony as Public Service Employee Jennifer Chester. Second, the challenge testimony is relevant to the Commission's evaluation of when and to what extent the company considered and presented alternative routes to the county, which is a question at issue in this proceeding. Third, the challenge testimony is not unfairly prejudicial and is sufficiently reliable and probative to be admitted. For these reasons, I recommend denying the motion to strike, and I'll pause here for a vote on the recommendation.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
All right, thank you. I'll now turn it over to Ruthie Harper to discuss two other motions filed in this proceeding.
Ms. Harper.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ruthie Harper of your Commission Council. The first motion on February 5th, Elbert County filed a motion under Colorado Rule of Civil Procedure 56H in Commission Rule 1400A, asking the Commission to rule on a legal question before the hearing. This is filed by the same council and is similar to the motion recently filed in the El Paso County proceeding that you denied earlier this month. Once again, the motion argues three statutes: the 1041 statute, the appeal statute, and the PUC authority statute must be read together and harmonized, and that harmonization requires the Commission to give substantial deference to the local government's decision denying the permit. And again, public service staff and the Colorado Energy Office opposed the motion, arguing it is untimely, unnecessary, and would not streamline the process. Can answer questions or give a recommendation?
Yeah, if you can give a recommendation, that'd be great.
As before, I recommend finding the motion does not narrow issues or reduce complexity. It simply proposes a legal interpretation that can be addressed later in the post-hearing statements of position. So I recommend finding it does not justify a pre-hearing ruling and exercising your discretion to deny the motion.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
That can be ABC.
Yes.
The next and final motion on February 6th, Elbert County filed a motion for summary judgment under Colorado Rule of Civil Procedure 56 and Rule 1400 of the Commission's rules. In short, the county is asking the Commission to decide the case without holding the scheduled evidentiary hearing starting tomorrow. The county makes three main arguments. First, that public service did not present reasonable siting and design alternatives as required by law because its permit applications identified only one route. Second, that public service could have presented other routes but did not, pointing to charts and testimony showing alternative routes considered during the siting process. And third, if there were alternatives, then the county should have been allowed to choose among reasonable routes that meet statewide transmission needs. The parties oppose the motion. Public service argues summary judgment is inappropriate because there are disputed facts, such as whether alternatives were considered and whether its presentation met statutory requirements. It emphasizes that it provided a detailed siting study and contends the county is imposing an extra requirement to submit a menu of route options, which the statute does not require. It also disputes the claim that it ignored routes further east, explaining it evaluated those options and found them unreasonable due to conservation easements, technical challenges, and other factors. For its part, staff argues the county's claim is contradicted by evidence in the record, including public services routing study and testimony explaining why certain alternatives were infeasible, such as impacts on a national natural landmark, higher costs, and wildfire risk. Staff stresses that summary judgment is a drastic remedy and inappropriate when factual disputes exist. Colorado Energy Office likewise opposes the motion, making similar arguments. I can answer questions or give a recommendation.
If you could give a recommendation, that'd be great.
As the movant, the county has the burden to prove the absence of any genuine issue of material fact and entitlement as a judgment as a matter of law. It has not carried that burden, and therefore the motion should be denied. I see at least 3 areas of uncertainty or disagreement about the facts and how the legal standard may apply, making summary judgment inappropriate. First, whether Public Service presented alternatives to the county. Public Service testified that it discussed alternatives with the county during the pre-application meeting. It explained that the purpose of the permit applications is not to offer a menu of options for the county to choose from, but rather to present a fully developed and detailed project. Public Service also stated it worked extensively with the public and the local communities when considering alternatives, and nothing in the statute requires that alternatives be presented with the permit application, as the county suggests. In fact, the statute directs the utility to consult with the local government about the routes under consideration and to attempt to resolve the land use issues before filing the application. This language indicates that consultation and the presentation of alternatives could occur before the application is submitted. Second, whether there were reasonable alternatives to present. The county's argument seems to treat reasonable alternatives as essentially any feasible route that could provide the transmission capacity. However, the statute uses the word reasonable, which suggests some standard. Because of this, if there is still ambiguity about what qualifies as a reasonable alternative, that uncertainty creates a factual dispute that must be resolved through a full evidentiary record, not summary judgment. And third, and finally, the question of consultation between Public Service and the county. The county argues it was meant to have the ability to choose among reasonable alternative routes and ensure it had a role in the siting decision. However, the statute uses the word consult, not choose. It also says the utility must attempt to resolve the land use issues, which signals an effort, not a guarantee of agreement. So in sum, these are mixed questions of law and fact that require a full evidentiary record. Therefore, I recommend denying the motion for summary judgment and proceeding with the hearing tomorrow.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I, and that could be an ABC decision. Anything else on this one?
That's all.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Mr. Felder, discussion of a future application on public service company from customer programs. You want to start us off?
Happy to. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Corey Felder. I'm with the advisory team here at the commission. I'll be presenting this next agenda item, which involves the commission's directive to Public Service Company of Colorado regarding the filing of a combined application by July 1st, 2026, addressing demand-side management, beneficial electrification, transportation electrification, on-bill financing, and clean heat resources. In addition to the filing requirements for each of those plans, the combined application must also address various commission directives included in prior proceedings regarding those topics. So to assist the commission in preparing for that filing, I'll be presenting a summary of those directives as they apply to the July 1st combined application. I have about 11 slides here. Let me make sure that they display correctly. Can you see that slide okay?
We can.
Great. I'll present about 11 slides and then turn it over to you all for a discussion about the broader vision and intent with this combined application. It's quite a long list of directives, but I'll try and keep it moving and keep my presentation brief so we can get to the discussion and can come back to any slides at your request once I've concluded. Before I move into the summary here, I did just want to clarify that this presentation was prepared as a discussion aid for you all. And the company and relevant parties should continue to refer to the written decisions in the relevant proceedings that are listed here when developing the combined application. This is meant as a summary to support the discussion. Just a brief note on methodology before I get started. The Commission Advisory Team reviewed the final decisions in each of the cases listed here on this slide. The slide shows the timing of each of the final decisions here, and I did just want to note that we focus primarily on the directives that the Commission included above and beyond the core filing requirements for future plans. So this presentation doesn't include all of the filing requirements, but just those specific directives from the Commission to the company for the July 1st filing. All right, I'll get started here with the oldest decision that's on our list, the Demand Side Management Strategic Initiatives decision in proceeding 22A0309EG. Starting from the top here with the new Demand Side Management Potential Study. The Commission directed the company to submit a new DSM potential study that includes additional information, such as new build, major retrofits, and other analysis to evaluate DSM implementation, and also to provide foundational information that helps the Commission better understand the energy efficiency and beneficial electrification markets. On methane leakage, finding that the company provided little support for the methane leakage rate it applied and had omitted downstream and upstream emissions without justification, the Commission ordered the company to consider behind the meter and upstream emissions as well as leakage when calculating the cost of methane emissions related to DSM cost effectiveness. On discount rates, noting that the legislature has explicitly directed the Commission to consider using multiple discount rates in a single analysis in the gas DSM context, the Commission ordered the company to present two cost effectiveness analyses that include the traditional weighted average cost of capital discount rate, and then a blend of the weighted average cost of capital discount rate and a 2.5 societal discount rate. With respect to income qualified and disproportionately impacted communities in this proceeding, the Commission made several requests, including the company better address interaction between the DI communities and the income qualified programs and eligibility, and then refine cost effectiveness tests, as you can see here on the slide. Moving down to advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, regarding the use of AMI, the Commission expressed disappointment at the company's apparent uncertainty about how to maximize the value of AMI, given the hundreds of millions of dollars invested in those technologies. And it requested that the company develop a suite of full scalable programs that show AMI is cost effective and is being leveraged to more fully optimize the use of grid infrastructure. Moving down to the last bullet on this slide on negative avoided costs. In response to concerns from parties that the company's proposed avoided cost methodology would produce negative avoided costs during hours where the marginal resource is curtailed renewable energy, and that this could have the effect of penalizing energy efficiency programs that can't adjust usage, the Commission found it reasonable for the company to exclude negative prices from the avoided cost calculation when renewable energy is curtailed. This slide deals with the demand response directives in the DSM-SI proceeding. When it came to demand response specifically, among other things, the Commission had directed Public Service to complete a new demand response study that identifies the full suite of demand response offerings based on use cases and on value. The full list of items that you had requested from the company is listed here, and I won't walk through them individually, but do note that the broader intent kind of focuses on getting at those use cases and at a more sophisticated understanding of value of DR. Moving back to avoided costs, finding that the avoided costs and emission rates used for calculating avoided costs should be derived from modeling the company's system inclusive of resources selected in phase 2 of the most recent electric resource plan. the Commission directed the company to calculate avoided electric capacity costs based on the marginal resource from the last ERP, as identified by an Encompass run with an incremental 50 megawatts of load. On the proxy plant methodology, the Commission asked for a detailed description of this methodology that the company had proposed in the prior plan and proposed to be used for calculating avoided electric costs, along with any related work papers, and directed the company to keep using the historical methodology for calculating avoided costs until that new methodology is approved. The Commission also requested several changes to the development and design of 3 performance incentive mechanisms, or PIMs: the energy efficiency PIM, the beneficial electrification PIM, and the demand response PIM. And those are detailed more specifically on the slide here. And as I said, I'm happy to return to it if helpful for the discussion later on. On gas demand response, the Commission was supportive of the idea behind the company's proposed new approach of identifying capacity-constrained portions of the system and targeting demand-side management activities in those areas. However, it didn't adopt the company's proposed targeted demand areas methodology, finding that it could produce enhanced benefits to the company without resulting in ratepayer savings from avoided costs or gas demand response. Instead, the company requested that the company propose a more geographically focused methodology that helps the Commission better understand the potential for targeted demand response. In implementing that methodology, the Commission also expressed interest in using some of the information that the company has provided about the potential value of demand reductions in areas with capacity constraints. Additionally, noting the existing gas demand response pilot's failure to produce meaningful results and demonstrated flaws in its exhibited flaws in its design and execution, the Commission also sought concrete proposals from the company on gas demand response program changes or new and different concepts. That concludes the directives for the DSM-SI proceeding. I'll move now into the Clean Heat Plan decision in 23A 0392EG. Starting here with performance incentive mechanisms, the Commission sought a consistent single mechanism to efficiently incentivize the company with a symmetrical incentive structure around the cost-effective achievement of system-wide greenhouse gas emissions. The Commission also sought consistency more broadly in program design and directed the company to ensure program uniformity irrespective of the funding source and to make programs available to customers irrespective of whether the company provides electric service, gas service, or both fuels. On the workforce front, the Commission directed the company to engage with relevant entities regarding workforce needs to expand demand-side management and beneficial electrification industries in pursuit of achieving the emissions targets, and also to consider whether similarities between work in those industries and the gas distribution pipe and gas distribution type work could help reduce the need to transition workers from one industry to the other. On the income qualified and disproportionately impacted community front, the Commission also made several requests, including prioritization of interventions like point of service rebates and inclusive financing options to spur adoption in beneficial electrification technologies, and encouraging those customers to enroll in other existing programs like PIP, the percentage of income payment plans, and existing demand response and energy efficiency program. Finding that the company should prioritize AC air conditioning replacement with heat pumps as a beneficial electrification pathway generally, but that some insufficient information had been presented on the relative value between prioritizing standard heat pumps or cold climate heat pumps. The Commission requested the company submit an updated evaluation of costs and benefits and trends and adoptions of those technologies. Finally, on the CHP front, I wanted to note that the company while it had declined to adopt a budget and associated emissions for 2020 in the prior plan, you did indicate that you plan to address both in the July 1 application context. Moving on now to the directives of the Transportation Electrification Plan, proceeding 23A 0242E. On cost-benefit analysis, highlighting concerns that the TEP doesn't clearly provide the information needed to sufficiently assess the EV adoption that is attributable to the company's investments under the plan, the Commission had requested several improvements to the cost-benefit analysis approach in the company's next filing. This includes evaluation of the adoption impact and cost benefit of its transportation programs as measured against other regions inside and outside the state, and assessing EV adoption across socioeconomic classes, including income qualified and disproportionately impacted communities. With respect to the rate impact methodology, raising concerns that the company's rate impact calculation may be making simplistic assumptions with respect to needed generation and transmission distribution investment for supporting EV sales, the Commission noted that further refinement to that methodology is needed to account for the full cost of incremental electricity sales driven by EV adoption. The Commission had multiple requests related to the company's residential portfolio, moving down to the next bullet here. I won't detail all the things in this large paragraph here, but I would note that they include requests for an on-bill financing proposal for level 2 chargers, more detailed information on the value of charging flexibility, prioritization of programs like Optimize Your Charge, Charging Perks, or EV Accelerate at Home over other legacy or utility ownership programs, and the provision of a thorough analysis of the future benefits of that Charging Perks program with consideration for load shifting, including during peak hours. On the plan administration budget, the Commission found that while it's reasonable to assume that capital used for software and other needs supports the plan goals, the company had provided little specificity regarding that portion of the budget. Accordingly, it directed, or you directed additional detail on line items like the capital component of the plan administration budget in the future, at least to the extent that the company intends to pursue ratepayer funding for those investments. Finally, on the TEP, while it rejected party proposals to wind down the Transportation Electrification Program's adjustment rider, the TEPA rider, the Commission expressed an interest in seeing fewer riders and a less complex bill more generally. In this context, you indicated that you'll take up the merits of winding down that rider in the next TEP application. We're most of the way through here. I just have a few more slides. Moving on now to the DSM beneficial electrification directives in proceeding 23A 0589 EG. More on data uniformity here. The Commission had requested proposed or reported spending and savings levels be presented uniformly with the metrics shown here, respectively. On rebate and program design, the Commission noted linkages between the DSM strategic initiatives and this plan, the DSM strategic initiative proceeding and this plan, and made several procedural changes, including by directing the company to file its proposed final rebate and program mechanics in the next strategic initiatives filing. That info should include the so-called GBGB model and similar models used to evaluate and set program rebates and other incentives. The Commission addressed performance incentive mechanisms in this case as well. Having adopted a demand management PIM that is upside only, the Commission directed the company to use the results from that PIM during the plan to determine if the design should change in the future to include a downside or a penalty for underachievement. On the AC awards program, the Commission adopted several rebate incentive changes. This included a requirement that the company evaluate the cost effective of extending the AC rewards program to individually metered customers, and also recommend any changes to that program in its next DSM filing. The last two bullets here on this slide, the first one relates to education and outreach. In that context, the company was required to develop tools, resources, or methodologies for contractors to use to provide customers with estimated bill impacts for various measures in the plan. And finally, the settlement agreement adopted the company's, I'm sorry, not finally, there's one more slide for the DSM for this proceeding. The settlement agreement adopted the company's proposed target demand areas methodology, but directed the company to include a prioritization framework for TDA in the next strategic initiatives filing and to address how it's coordinated with gas infrastructure planning. Last few for DSM-BE, the GBGB model, noting that the company did not submit this model in its strategic initiatives application. The commission, or you all, noted that the proceedings are interrelated and that this model would be helpful in setting strategic initiative goals and budgets. Accordingly, you direct the company to submit this model and other models used internally to evaluate DSM program capabilities with support for all major assumptions in the next strategic initiatives filing. Finally, with respect to cost effectiveness analysis, noting concerns about the disconnect between the company's contention that beneficial electrification measures would be cost effective by 2026 on the one hand, and analysis showing decreasing cost effectiveness each year on the other, the commission directed the company to file an updated evaluation of and opportunities to improve the beneficial electrification program's cost effectiveness in the 2026 applications. I'll now turn to the final proceeding that I'll cover today, which relates to the on-bill financing proceeding 25A0036E. At a high level, the commission emphasized several priority objectives that are detailed in this first bullet here for the next filing, including rate buydowns for targeted customers to 0%, application of rebates prior to financing, establishment of a loan loss reserve, and a modified cost test as a primary metric. With respect to the loan loss reserve, the commission had approved the establishment as a regulatory asset and encouraged working toward a lower initial interest rate in the next filing. With respect to the cost benefit analysis, the commission directed the company to file a cost benefit analysis that uses that modified utility cost test to better capture the costs to the rate base against the societal and system benefits. One additional component of this request was that the company provide clearly identified inputs to support the testing of different assumptions in that context. The commission also made several requests to clarify the list of energy efficiency and beneficial electrification measures that will be supported via the program. And finally, the commission directed the company to provide an update on its work toward developing the greater than 10-year repayment terms based on weighting that considers the useful lives of bundled measures. This concludes the summary of directives included in these proceedings, and I will now hand it over to you for discussion. Please let me know if you'd like me to return to any specific slide.
Thank you so much, Mr. Felder, for pulling this together. This is awesome and provides real guidance to the parties and us for what's going to happen next. Commissioner Gilman, you want to share thoughts, lead us in a guided discussion anywhere you'd like to go?
I don't know if I'll be guiding you, but I'm happy to start a discussion. I appreciate too, Mr. Felder. Appreciate it was a walk down memory lane back to 2022 of many of our favorite proceedings. But it was a helpful overview of some of the key points already ordered and addressed to be addressed in this large combined filing that we'll see this summer. You know, and as I see it, Chair, really the goal I would have for today is to have a public discussion, you know, to some extent on these prior decisions, especially those that influence what we should see specifically in that filing, but also just more broadly on the vision and goals surrounding this large set of customer programs and how they influence the strategic and affordable vision of how we serve additional loads, especially loads coming on to help pursue other state policy goals, and really how we bring all of this vision together, especially to ensure that we're doing so in a way that's optimized around use of the system and price for customers at the end of the day. So I certainly hope it's helpful to have this discussion well in advance of the filing to ensure we have as successful a start as possible to that proceeding. So, you know, to me, Mr. Felder listed out many different boxes to be checked, but more than just checking these discrete boxes, you know, I'm really hoping to see the company building a vision where our investments and resources are intentionally optimized rather than built around kind of static, non-optimized assumptions around each of these different new loads. And so, I think generally we've expressed over the course of several years a need for the company to prioritize strategic integration of these new loads, especially new technologically advanced loads like EVs and heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, and others which tend to have the ability to be internet connectable and highly controllable. And this is manifested in these many different directives. And I will note those are each based on the record that's before us in that particular proceeding. We don't often have the benefit of having all of the information in the universe in one of these proceedings. We have to look at the discrete kind of programs and issues and costs being put forth before us in each of those proceedings. And I think if we look over the past year in particular, we've seen a lot of things come into much greater focus, especially around the costs associated with adding new capacity to the system, from the distribution, transmission to generation side of things, especially in really an environment that unfortunately looks like rapidly escalating costs for a lot of this based on, different federal policies, tariffs, other factors, supply chain issues, leftover from COVID, whatever it is, the cost to add this new capacity, especially at peak, is significant and really has come into much greater focus over the last year, which was actually after a lot of the things Mr. Felder brought up, which were litigated before we saw, say, the last DSP and the JTS come in. And I know we all know this, but for the listening public, the system itself tends to be built around that peak. So it matters. Certainly, it matters how much you use of electricity, but it very much matters when you use it, and that's why we've seen broad introduction of time of use rates to really try to show those economics to the customers, with the hope that individual customers can, first of all, make choices that save themselves money, but also make collective choices that help save money on the total infrastructure and the total system by understanding the cost impact of when you use electricity. And so the data provided in the DSP, JTS, and other proceedings has been criticized by some of the parties, by the commission itself, in terms of the sophistication and control with which the company is anticipating they'll have over some of these loads, or be exerted over some of these loads, to really try to better optimize that situation and accept the loads, but ideally try to ensure that they are not hitting in their full force right at the system peak and kind of compounding those costs for the system. Certainly to us, I think we've expressed on many occasions through many different venues our real desire to see a sincere effort to control these loads, to minimize their impact on system peak, which is really helpful to ensure that we're optimizing the infrastructure we already have, minimizing the additional infrastructure that we need, which ends up keeping customer costs as low as possible as we move forward. And so we've seen billions and billions of dollars before this commission just in the past year alone, much of which was based on not an incredibly high ambition for management of some of these resources. And I think what we're looking at this summer is really a lot of the programs that underpin what will be offered to customers, not only in terms of upfront rebates, but also in terms of demand response and flexibility of these new loads, and how do we kind of better build an integrated vision of not just bringing the loads on, but having some active role in managing those to ensure we're keeping the costs as low as possible for everyone. So I would just say, in addition to those several proceedings Mr. Felder brought up, there's also several references within the DSP decision and the JTS decision reflecting this same situation. In the JTS decision, the commission expressed that the company must increase its projections for future managed charging for the purposes of its load forecast, so we can mitigate this expansion of peak load needs and provide a meaningful improvement in the managed charging participation rates and innovative program design that will be critical to electrifying the transportation sector affordably. And we also directed the company to explore, in the context of the next TEP filing, additional ways to improve the managed charging programs and participation, including the possibility of requiring customers to take advantage of utility-sponsored rebates to participate in managed charging programs as a condition of receiving that rebate. Also provided feedback on the usage patterns provided for space heating technology, as with EVs, and stated it's imperative that the company continues to expand its capability in this area through its various demand response, VPP, and similar initiatives to mitigate coincident peaks causing system and component level peaks. So we've seen this across proceedings, so I think it's helpful to talk about today. I know it's a long list, but I appreciate the opportunity to have the discussion now to better inform the company's development of their summer filing. And really, I think my expectation that demand response and flexibility has to be embedded rather than an afterthought in these programs from day one, as we're envisioning them, as we are continuing to see where we should go with them, to really enable us to save individual customers who participate in the programs, but as well as collectively for the system as a whole, to better optimize and minimize those expenditures on the system. So yeah, wanted to see your all thoughts. I know from our prior discussions, I feel like we were pretty aligned largely on these points, but hopefully it's a good opportunity enough in advance of that filing to really lay out a robust expectation and vision for how the company pursues this and communicates this as part of that large consumer programs filing.
Well, I thought that was really well said. I couldn't agree more with what you said. And I just highlight a couple things that we showed up in our DSP order. And I just hammer the fact that, in the JTS and the DSP, we saw enormous capital spending arising to meet a very few hours of demand, as you said. And one thing you didn't touch on, but that we did in our DSP order, is that, the company spends more capital and, potentially earns more by, not managing these loads off peak. So somehow, whether it's through rates or these programs, we just have to get get these loads off peak, or as you said, the costs are going to be really high. So totally agree with that. The other thing I'd add to what you said is locational issues. I think it's like the same conversation we had this morning, both in the EDR context and in the NTP context, where it just matters where the load shows up. If load shows up on a distribution constrained feeder or in the Denver metro area, it's inherently more expensive to serve than if it's flexible and locates outside the Denver metro area. So those are the two additions, both of which were in our prior orders, that there's this risk of misaligned incentives that we outlined in our DSP order, and there's all these locational issues that also showed up in our JTS order. So those are the two friendly amendments I'd make to what you said, Commissioner Gilman, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Plant and see if you have any final thoughts, Commissioner Gilman. Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate this this conversation. And on the locational issue, I think that also appreciate you bringing that up, because that also brings up the value of the management of those resources on those constrained feeders, and the avoidance of additional costs for increasing capacity in those constrained areas. And I think one of the ways that we're trying to capture some of that locational value is through the VPP program. But the VPP program also is dependent on having customers that are participating through the various different devices. And I appreciate Commissioner Gilman's bringing up the importance of the managed demand and how that needs to really be tied in with our incentive structure so that we're incentivizing people to actually participate in these management programs and so that we can gain the optimum benefits from that. And maybe that's a stacked incentive system where we get both the benefits of the resource but also the benefits of the management. And one of the things we talked about in the ERP, the 21 ERP, I think, decision was how our changing resources really make the managed demand side an integral part of our overall system. And we kind of, it's historically treated as an afterthought, but it needs to be a real integral part of that system planning. And I think that certainly this commission has been trying to push that direction, but really reflecting that in the incentive structure, I think is a key component, as well as incorporating financing, on-bill financing as a part of an incentive structure. I mean, it is reducing barriers to people being able to participate in these programs. And so looking at it as a whole, I think is really important. Um, and So one of the other things, and I think you touched on this a little bit, Mr. Chairman, is inviting aggregators to participate in these proceedings. I think that the tendency is for the aggregator community to participate in the VPP, but this is, they're actually intersecting directly with the customers that would be participating in these programs. So uh, having them help to identify what the barriers are and how we can reduce those barriers and make those incentives better and more effective, I think is a really key component to developing programs that will lead where we want them to. And also, and I think you touched on this as well, Commissioner Gilman, is making sure that the assumptions that we're, putting into this proceeding actually carry through in future proceedings so that we're actually developing the modeling inputs that will go into the next DSP because we see the benefits being accrued in one proceeding and then completely ignored in another proceeding, and making sure that we're carrying those one forward to the next, I think is an area where the intervening parties are going to need to be participating and providing some record so that we can base that in the order on the DSP and then also future ERPs. And one thought I wanted to throw out, that's really those are the things that I had. One thought that I wanted to throw out to you guys and see if this would be beneficial is doing some kind of a sim around. I was thinking around managed charging, but maybe it could be around just managed demand in general. But really, I think a lot of the discussion around things like managed charging have been discussions about how, what the benefits are to the system. I think we're all very clear on that. I think what I think would help in understanding is, what are the barriers that customers have to participating in a managed charging program? What are their concerns and how can we reduce those barriers? How can we address those concerns and how can we develop programs that are going to really be effective not only in scale of managed charging, but in speed of getting people enrolled. We have a lot of resources out there on the system today that could be participating in these kind of managed programs, but they're not. And we need to kind of crack that nut and figure out what it is that we need to do within our program design to make sure that we can get those folks participating, because the benefits are just enormous and the costs are of not having them in that are enormous as well. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to see if you'd be interested in maybe doing some kind of a sim, you know, well prior to the, I guess it's a July submission of this proceeding, so that we can maybe talk through some of those issues.
Well, I love that idea. We had done one sim with an outside person in the past, this guy Bill LeBlanc, and there may be an opportunity to get RMI in front of us in the coming weeks. I'll work with advisors and counsel and you to follow up on that sim. And to your point about trying to manage across cases, there was like a reference in the JTS TBC decision where the company put one set of assumptions forward in the TAP, and then just like completely in a different universe in the JTS. Well, we could never do that, even though it was a fraction of what they said in the TAP. I should have revised the triple R. And then I guess the last thing I'd say before turning it back to you, Commissioner Gilman, is that it's also a distributed solar issue and a curtailment issue. We're looking at potentially enormous curtailments of wind and solar during certain hours. And the more we can flexibly not only keep the load off peak, but add it to this, super off peak time when we're curtailing resources, can create a lot of value. And I think it was outside Mr. Felder's scope for good reason. But, increasing on the distributed solar, we just got to shift from energy towards capacity, because we have a capacity problem. For 15 years, Colorado had an energy problem where, reducing energy use reduced emissions, and that was, favored state policy. But as we squeeze the emissions off the system, and as we, increasingly see curtailed wind and solar, our problem is way more a capacity problem than an energy problem, at least in terms of the capital spend and the economics of the system. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I will say, Commissioner Plant, we have been planning a commissioner information meeting at this point for the end of March. That was to cover some demand flexibility programs at other utilities. Kind of to your point, to enough in advance enable us to really better understand and get an overview of some different successful programs throughout the country. That will include not all EV programs, but at least one or two EV programs. So I will say there is something already in the works. It's not a incredibly wide array of EV programs, but we do at least have one EV program that's included in that for us to learn more about and evaluate for a commissioner information meeting that we've been working on in the background. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, I think, Chairman, with regard to your locational issues, totally agree. And I think I'm hoping with regard to, our directives, especially from the DSMSI, to lay out really the ecosystem of demand response and demand flexibility offerings or options. What are the use cases? What are the values to the system, and how would we deploy these? Certainly one of the use cases is local One of the use cases is local distribution system constraints. One of the use cases would be transmission constraints into a larger area. And so I would hope that that is part of what's addressed there, which like what are the different tools you have for each variety of issue or constraint that we're trying to avoid, delay, defer, and kind of optimize around. Clearly a basis, I think VPPs could be a valuable tool in that, which we've already discussed. But a basis of that is really timely and transparent information and data access, such that third parties are able to provide that role if we're on a 14-month lag for what information there is about what's going on different points of the grid. That does not get us anywhere with trying to optimize around locational constraints specifically. So I'm hopeful we are on a path to like at least get some better access there. And then I would say too, I think Commissioner Plant, you talked about VPPs. I just have a smattering of notes I wrote as you were writing. That's highly dependent at this point on information provided by the company. And so there is an unfortunate but important role there for the commission to play in policing. How's that going? Do we really have the right access to the right information for the right people to be playing a role there? Certainly, like there's the company's own demand response, demand flexibility offerings. There's VPPs, which would potentially largely overlap with some of the same offerings. And so we're at an interesting inflection point on all of this, of what direction is all of this going to go. But you also made a point about, taking the outputs of this and properly applying those to proceedings moving forward. I think what's helpful about this timing now is saying, okay, so let's like take that and reverse it. Let's make sure we're putting the right inputs into this process that's coming this summer. We have very fresh data on the cost of adding marginal peak load across generation, transmission, and distribution. And we cannot be having the company using 2, 3, 4-year-old data on these costs, right? We have it in front of us. So I think that to me is our priority, to ensure we're expressing like, we just litigated a bunch of these things. We know much better. We have much better, more recent information than, as I recall, in some of the last times we litigated some of these things about the actual cost implications, and putting a more precise value to demand response and demand flexibility, which then we need to ensure properly reflects how the programs are designed, such that we are sharing that value and properly incentivizing customers to act in their own best interest, as well as in the best interest of the system at large, to make sure we can kind of collectively optimize the cost of all of this. So yes, on outputs, but also on inputs. I'm not looking to see years old data being used here, especially because it's changed so quickly. We've really seen such a rapid escalation in these costs that it's essential we're using, accurate and recent cost data here. And then the only other thing I was going to add, Chairman, to your point about kind of performance and performance incentive. Yes, to the point, like right now, the more peak load grows, the more investments the company makes, the bigger the rate base gets, the more profit they make. Like that is a fact of the matter of how this all operates, which makes it difficult and complicated to ensure that they optimize around this, because their financial goals are likely not around optimizing and making sure we don't kind of overbuild the peak or forego opportunities to reduce the peak. And so I think we'll have to think moving forward, there's a lot of discussions in multiple venues, I guess I would say. Got an electric rate case going. We've got a rulemaking that needs to come up regarding, some of the performance-based framework, definitely the energization interconnection, potentially other issues. So I think trying to figure out, but I totally agree with you. Like there is a clear area here where their financial motivation probably deviates from what is the best in total for the system and optimizing those costs. And so how do we look at that on a performance basis? Can we look at different metrics across the system to really set an ambition of improved and optimized use of the assets and of the infrastructure to make more inherent incentives around aligning those goals with our goals to reduce that peak.
Well, thanks so much for the discussion. Ms. McLaughlin, are you out there? Mr. Felder, are you out there? Do you have any advice about how to put this into some form of written guidance that can help frame up the company's filing again, so we're get this in the direct case instead of trying to do it on supplemental direct? I know there was like a 26A TEP filing. Could we do an order in that case? How do we get this codified and to the company and the parties, and maybe even get a dialogue with the parties and the company? And you don't have to answer now if you want to take it offline. But somehow it seems like this should be written up and in the form of some binding or non-binding guidance to the parties. And hopefully Mr. Felder was listening and can capture the yes, thank you. My notes were all over the place. Ms. McLaughlin, any guidance now? And like I say, we can come back later.
Yeah, I think I heard a few things today, including some interest in a sim. I think no decision from today. We kind of set this up as a new process that I think the commission can sort of have some guidance. And I really do agree with your appreciation of Mr. Felder providing those slides so that the commission could have a directed conversation. I think parties and the company will benefit from reviewing this recorded discussion. And we can talk offline if there's more that the commission wants to do at future weekly meetings to have further process around it. So I appreciate that, and we'll follow up with you as we need to offline.
Yeah, I'd love to get some written capture of the discussion instead of relying just on the recorded one. So, all right. With that, Mr. Felder, anything else other than thanks for your work pulling everything together? Greatly appreciated. Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. Thank you.
Would you be willing to try and write up the discussion or summarize what you heard?
You want me to try and summarize it now or after the meeting? Okay.
Yeah, maybe for a future weekly meeting or for the benefit of the parties. You'll have as Ms. McLaughlin noted, you'll have a transcript. So
I have notes and can use a transcript and yeah, that makes sense in the context of what Ms. McLaughlin said as well.
all right. Commissioner Plant, any final thoughts before we adjourn for the day?
Nope, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Commissioner Gilman, final thoughts?
Nothing additional, thanks.
Thanks to the team. Thanks to you both, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a good one.